Welcome to the Lord's Minute, our quick hit video series where we talk about all the biggest happenings in gaming and beyond. I'm your host, Ty Swinson, writer for lordsofgaming.net, and with me today is Lord King David. Our question for the day. With Venom 2's debut trailer and Easter eggs pointing to Spider-Man and the bigger Marvel world, why do you think Andy Serkis has chosen to keep the Venom story mostly isolated? Lord King, you have the floor.
Well, because of contract, it has really absolutely nothing to do with anything but contracts. They aren't. They are beholden to contractual obligations, and they have to write these characters into the Marvel universe. Marvel doesn't own these contracts. I mean, these characters for screen. They own the characters in the books. And what I've noticed with Disney is they will not promote characters they don't own wholly. So when it comes to certain things like the Hulk, they're doing the Immortal Hulk now, and that run is pretty good. And I think they're on the precipice of actually getting them away from Paramount. Um, and when they didn't own the Fantastic Four, when it was with Fox, they actually killed, Johnny Storm and killed the Fantastic Four off. They did the same thing with mutants. When they didn't own them, they was with Fox. They actually killed almost all the mutants off. And I noticed this with Disney. They have no cares and they have time. So they know at some point in time they will get these characters. Now, it's beneficial for Spider-Man to stay in the MCU in a separate universe at this point because it's a barter system. You know that he has something to offer, and Disney has something to get, and they have something to offer Spider-Man because I believe that they caught Spider-Man when he was at his waning time. Spider-Man is really good when you compare him up with characters. Now, what we've noticed is they've become very ingenious with how Sony is, how they can tell a story without using the main protagonist, which is Spider-Man. They flipped it on its head. They have Venom as anti-hero,
Right.
but they're using the comedy aspect. Now, a lot of dudes in my stature group doesn't like the fact that Venom is being used as a comedy aspect, and I feel kind of the same way. But when it's in the comic books, Spider-Man is the comedy relief. Spider-Man says, the quick quips and the puns and all this other stuff that actually have you laughing when he's fighting Venom. If Venom is supposed to be serious the whole tone, it wouldn't make for a good film. So you got to have that inner thoughts like they're doing now with Eddie Brock and laughing and Venom cooking and stuff like that. So you really need to have these little comedy levity things so it can produce a good story. Now with Carnage, I don't believe Carnage would be anything but how they wanted Venom to be, pure, like terror, which he should be.
Right.
So Venom is actually taking the place of Spider-Man in this role, and Carnage is actually taking the place of Venom. So if we would have had an ideal world, you would have had Spider-Man there. He would have had the comedy relief. Venom would have been a dark version of what we have now, and then Carnage would be an even darker version of that. But I think they're gonna do fantastic because the whole world that they crafting over at Sony with Morbius and the whole Sinister Six that they plan to roll out, I think Morbius is gonna really screen well. He's a very good character. I think this Venom movie is going to do extremely well because it has a ton of interest from the first movie, from that fan base that actually likes them. Tom Hardy plays a great Venom. He plays a great Brock. The story they're crafting is great. So at this point in time, they don't need to do it. But if they ever have to retcon this story, they can do it so easily with the multiverse, what they're trying to do with Doctor Strange. So if they do a Doctor Strange Tales into the Multiverse, and you have Scarlet Witch doing all this stuff with her hex powers that can affect the world in strange ways, and they can actually introduce these characters at a moment notice by saying, oh, this happened this way because of this magic spell or whatever, and now they're introduced into the world, which would make it a great Marvel universe. But at this time, contracts keeps that stuff away, and contracts is our bigger detriment.
Right. Yeah, as you said, it's definitely a contractual thing because Andy Serkis himself, when he was talking about this, he never ultimately shut the door on the idea or made it seem like it's something that he wouldn't want to see. He just said, like, at this time down the road, we'll see what happens. And like you mentioned with Morbius, during the Morbius trailer, we saw an Easter egg where there was graffiti of Spider-Man that said murder
Yes,
on it, which would hint that Morbius would take place after Far From Home with how the events shaked out with that movie.
yes.
And we also saw Michael Keaton make a debut in that trailer as well. So with these hints and pieces of basically these movies being adjacent to the main MCU and Spider-Man storyline, and with what they're trying to introduce with the multiverse stuff, do you think if contracts would allow and these characters can integrate more with each other, would that be something later down the line for this phase, or would it be the next phase after this one for Avengers?
Well, what Disney showed, they showed they up to what was it, like phase 8, something like that, something crazy. They went all the way up to, they thought it was Fantastic Four, but 4 was the Captain America shield, the fourth movie for Captain America, which pissed off a ton of people. Um
Mhm.
but I think their plate is pretty full. That's why they didn't even show Spider-Man in that whole slate. The thing about it is Sony has the right of presentation when they go to do these slates and stuff like that. Sony has the right to, and they have the first right to show the character, show the trailers, show it off, and promote it. And this is in the contracts. It was a real dark time for Marvel when they had to sell off these characters to
Mhm.
individual entities, and now it's kind of coming back to bite them because you don't have, well, finally they got Namor is back. Finally they got the X-Men. They have Fantastic Four, and they're just trying to get back Spider-Man. The whole deal before, what they wanted was, they wanted Spider-Man and they wanted his whole rogues gallery. Sony would not budge on the rogues gallery and only budged on the whatchamacallit, on Spider-Man himself. So to be part of the MCU. And I think that next time when they go back to the table and this movie is so successful, they'll sit down, they'll come up with something else, because to do an ultimate movie where you have Venom inside the movie, you have him versus Spider-Man, and let's say you have like an Ironheart show up, the Young Avengers
Mm.
show up to help him out, or Nick Fury teaching Spider-Man certain things, and on that show, Iron Fist was there. If you looked at the
Yeah.
cartoon, so there's a lot of things that they can play with, that they can get these characters up to snuff. But like I said, contracts, time, and it's not going to be on a Disney slate. You won't see it in any phases on the
Mhm.
Disney side. But if they do actually come to some agreement, Sony will definitely bring all that information out ahead of time.
Right. That is all very exciting, and hopefully we will see that rather sooner than later. Venom is definitely one of my favorite Marvel characters. It's interesting how the Venom symbiote has evolved over the years, jumping from host to host, having
Yes.
different character archetypes. But this has been the Lord's Minute. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at lordsofgaming.net. I'm Ty Swinson here with Lord King. This has been the Lord's Minute.
Peace.